Medical.com, and there find the 100-year outlook on health published by the Rockefeller Foundation in 2013. These folks have so much money, and I'm not pointing fingers at the Rockefellers because they're in cahoots with central banking system out of Europe. So you then can look into London and the Rothschild and the Corporation of London. But again, like I mentioned, this is a Roman mechanism that's living and breathing inside of London that is now controlling the United States, and it's completely obliterated the Constitution because of it. So here you can draw 2 points, listeners, in Chuck. Here's the 2 points that I've recently drawn. You then listen to Bill Gates and you think, okay, wait a second. Here's a guy that's a computer software engineer. He created Microsoft, not Macrosoft. Okay, interesting. About that same era, Steve Jobs invents a personal computer, not a macro computer. So there's something about microisms. That's a word I just blotted out. But there's something about the individual here. Now, what you link that to is ID 2020. And Gates has actually said publicly, from every search that I've been able to make, that he would like everybody that's been diagnosed as having COVID or coronavirus, COVID-19, as being vaccinated and having a chip implanted. If you go into DARPA then, and you look at some of the military funding that's being pumped into the cell phone technology, which is of course being used to survey people, then you type in DARPA 6G, and what are some of the studies being done on the 6G, the coming 6G system? Well, they are brain chips, actual technology where people will have a brain chip implant, and they won't even realize it. So it's not even a question.
So you think it'll be injected through the vaccine that Gates is talking about? And also, by the way, the Wuhan labs, that's public knowledge now. I mean, I saw a link to that on the Drudge Report, which is about as establishment as you can get, where they say that after 9/11, the federal government began financing and funding money to these labs, particularly that one, which clearly was experimenting with, viruses, coronaviruses of all sorts, including MERS and SARS and all the rest. And look, I don't know what happened with it, and whether or not this was a release from that lab, whether it was an accident or whether it was on purpose. You can't know because we're talking about a communist country here that can do almost anything they want. But it does seem to fit with an agenda of world control, of population control, of eugenics, of in a sense, the Chinese don't give a crap if they infect half their population. I mean, in fact, they probably want to. And did they export it? I mean, are we involved now in a biological, are we being assaulted by a biological weapon? I mean, is this a biological war?
Oh, it's absolutely a biological war. But again, I steer listeners not to point fingers at the Chinese. This is an invisible enemy, just that we saw in 2000. And Chuck, 2000 hit, I felt like joining the Marines and going over and blowing up the jihad. Okay, that was and that was the reaction. That was the engineered reaction. It wasn't until 2016 that I began to look at the U.S. government in an alternative view. And I'm not talking about the government that represents the Constitution.
Yeah, I'm talking about the government, the insiders, what we used to euphemistically call the Eastern Seaboard liberal establishment. These are people who are these amoral, internationalist-oriented, globalist, powerful people, many of whom are well-meaning, but the fact is they want to control the world through their power. Whether they want to do it for the good or for evil, I don't care. I don't want them to control me. I don't want them to control my country. I think that sovereignty rests with the individual under God, not with some group of secretive elites.
Yeah, no, exactly, Chuck. Let me throw a quote out here. And this book has sold over 5 million copies, to my understanding. It was written by a former Stanford alum. I believe he's now deceased. His name is Gary Allen.
You mean none dare call it a conspiracy? Yeah,
that's correct, Charles.
Classic book.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So the quote here, and this is why I steer listeners to not point fingers at the Chinese. A, Communism is not a political mechanism that originated in China. Communism is not a political
No, really
mechanism that
in Europe.
originated in Russia. What?
It originated in Europe with the Illuminati and with Marx.
That's correct. And
Yeah.
there's disputes that even Karl Marx originated it. But here's what Gary Allen said about communism. And then you have to thread that into the Hegelian dialectic, which is exactly what you're talking about, Chuck. The Hegelian dialectic calls for controlling the opposites. We know that Prescott Bush, through Union Bank and J.P. Morgan, funded the Nazi regime and Hitler. We know that. He was funding both sides of the conflict. He was brought up as a war criminal. Okay. And so Gary Allen quotes, communism, or more accurately, socialism, is not a movement of the downtrodden masses. That's what we're all led to believe.
Oh, that's just a marketing campaign, of course.
It's a campaign run by the economic elite, and I'm saying you point fingers not at the English or the British, but you point fingers at the banking mechanism that controls them, because it's the same device that's controlling us in the United States. Yeah. So the Chinese run a communist platform because they bought into it. The People's Bank of China is not a Chinese bank. It's a Western bank. That's my argument, Chuck.
Yeah,
and again, you have to look at the money.
I don't know. I don't know about that because I'm not on the inside. I mean, I tend to think that China is very kind of isolated and self-directed. I mean, obviously, communism was an import from Europe and from Russia.
Yeah.
But they've had a hegemonic power, and certainly you have elites in this country who are working hand in glove with them. But I don't know. I mean, these things are a little speculative. But anyways, here we are today. We have this biological weapon, all over the place, and people are dying and getting very sick, and we want to avoid it, obviously. What can we do? Now, I've heard two things that I think are encouraging. The first one is the use of this drug called hydrochloroquine, mixed with an antibiotic, Zithromax, and possibly zinc, which has proven to be very successful in treating it, and which has caused outrage among the establishment. President Trump has been vilified for even bringing it up. And I think the reasons for that are mainly, first, on the surface, because it's cheap, costs $20 for a dose, and they want to make money from this thing with their vaccines, with their chips, or whether chips or not. And secondly, because it actually is going to stop this virus, and they want to prolong it, because as Rahm Emanuel so famously said, you have to, don't let a good crisis go to waste. I mean, what a better crisis for them than having us all locked down in our houses, sitting around and, being unfree. And the second drug was just mentioned to me by a guest of mine the other night, that being James Wright, who's written about the Masonic conspiracy. And I don't know if I believe him, but I think that he mentioned that he has HIV and that he takes a drug called PrEP, PrEP, which prevents the spread of HIV among people who take it, even people who don't have it. And he says that this stops the coronavirus in its tracks. You can take this drug once a day, and you could go out and have a coronavirus sandwich, and you're not going to catch it. Now, I'm not here to endorse that. I don't know, but I'm wondering, what are you hearing about these things?
Well, I'm hearing the same things you're hearing as well, Chuck. Look, when I was in Miami, the Zika virus, I got dreadfully sick. The Zika virus wasn't what made me sick. I went out surfing, and that's when I was exposed to the pesticide, which has a half-life that doubles once it contacts water. Again, that pesticide is called Naled. Look, I've heard the same things you're hearing. A guest I had on the program 3 weeks ago, W. Gifford Jones, Harvard Medical School. He's now 96 years old. He scaled in Toronto a skyscraper 2 years ago. Very healthy guy.
Incredible.
Okay. I asked him on my program, okay, IanTrottier.com, it's available there. I asked him on my program, I said, how do you suggest people fight the coronavirus as a virus, as a health problem? He swore, as a 96-year-old, he swore that high intake. If an individual has, this is coming from a Harvard medical graduate, 96 years old, he's got millions of followers. He said, Ian, if someone has the coronavirus, take vitamin C intravenously. It will kill any virus. He swore to that, Chuck. He swore.
No, that's great. I mean, I take a ton of it. I take a pretty large dose of vitamin C every day, and also I take a natural stem cell enhancer. I do. I mean, it's a good idea to develop your own regimen of supplements anyway, that are specific to your condition. And no, that's great advice. I mean, I think it was Linus Pauling who was taking, what was it, like 100,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C. And he was also, I think, a Harvard researcher, and he won a Nobel Prize. So, no, that's great advice. Ian, I'm sorry to say this, but I'm kind of running a little bit out of time here. But I can see that you and I are soulmates, and I want to have you back. And we could do some.
Let me know when.
Yeah, we could do some great broadcasting together. Now, please mention to my listeners and viewers, because I am getting this on tape, where they can get your book, where they can learn about your program, anything else you want to mention.
Thanks, Chuck. Really appreciate it. By the way, just one before I answer that, Diana Gifford, she's got a degree from JFK at Harvard, the School of Government. No Nonsense Health is his co-author on that recent book. Freedom Reserved, No More Lies. Comes out next week. It's available on Amazon. It's available pre-order on Barnes & Nobles. Or Barnes & Noble. It's available in Canada on Chapters, in the UK, Denmark, Australia, you name it. It comes out next Thursday, my understanding. It's published by Trine Day.
Good. I like them.
Thank you.
And Chris Milligan, good guy. Mm-hmm.
And it goes into, Chuck, it goes into basically what started me on what I'm doing right now, which is this weekly show every Wednesday, 5 p.m. I'll be folding into my own hour here. Where I'm scheduled to have Gerald Posner. Simon Schuster may have to reschedule him. J.P. Lindstroth, who's got a PhD from Oxford, former Fulbright scholar to Brazil. He'll be joining me at the 6 o'clock hour. So Excellent. That book basically gets into some of the nitty gritty of what got me going. Listeners can follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. That's IAN TROTTIER. And what I most encourage, Chuck, encourage is that people go to my website, IANTROTTIER.com, click on the articles tabs. And under that is a compilation of 3 to 4 years worth of free. These are accessible free on the internet. Most of them downloadable, PDF, Anthony Sutton, Stanford Hoover, his books. And go there as a resource to dig up some of these different things that you and I have been discussing over this past hour.
Yes. Did you have a chance to interview the late Anthony Sutton?
No.
Okay.
I think,
great man. Sutton, really amazing books. The America's Secret Establishment and the Bolsheviks and Wall Street and the Nazis in Wall Street. Great stuff. Anyway, Ian, thanks again. I really appreciate it. Great talking to you. And let's stay in touch. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Chuck.
All right. Thank you.